Austin ISD. How is everybody doing? Are you ready? I invite you to find your seat, and we will get started. If you are a student who will be asking questions, please come to the front so you can find your seat at the front. Perfect. I have Ellison, and I have Chloe, and I have Emerson and Ingrid. Welcome. Thank you. We also have Matias Segura here. Hi. I cannot see your name. Let me see. Oh, you're Phoenix. Beautiful name. I am Joy. And not everybody needs to sit on the same side. We can do half and half, whichever way you want to do it. And Matias can sit. Where do you want to sit, Matias? In the middle? Yeah. Yeah. All right. How are you doing, guys? It's Saturday. You could be, I don't know, running the marathon, but who wants to do that? Not me. It is so great to see you. My name is Joy Diaz, and I lead community engagement for the district. And we have some beautiful young people here behind me, and they are going to be asking the questions for today's forum. We also have an audience online who are listening and who will be asking questions. And we also had a thought exchange. If you do not know what a thought exchange is, it's a super cool thing. Almost as cool as the dress that you're wearing right there. Look at you. The thought exchange is this tool where the community can post their questions. And if another community member logs in and they like the question, they just bump it up. And so the top questions are the ones that we're going to be asking today. And as I was scrolling online last night, I could see some community members saying, hey, vote my question up. So that was working. Yeah, they were talking to all of their friends. Hey, I want my question to be asked. So that was wonderful. Today, just for the audience online, we are at Marshall Middle School. It's one of our newest middle schools in the district. It's beautiful. Come and visit one day. And for those of us who are here, we are going to have a treat. Tara, who is a librarian. You know they are superstars, right? Tara, who is a librarian, is going to be leading us. So starting right now, I am going to put my microphone right there for our students. Actually, this one is going to go to you, Matias.
Okay, sounds
and
good.
Then,
do I hand it?
I did not welcome you. Guys, the whole purpose of today's meeting is to get to know the lone finalist to be superintendent of the Austin Independent School District, Matias Segura. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. And I'm going to hand him this microphone, and then I'm going to hand you this microphone, and you can share. Do you guys remember sharing from kindergarten? You remember sharing? Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
Yeah, we can
Tara,
go back.
welcome. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so students, what we're going to be doing is as we go down the line, I'm going to have you state your name, and then I need you to tell us what school that you're from, and then we'll do a question. And I'm going to try and kind of go back and forth between the questions we've received from the Thought Exchange, anything I'm seeing on our Zoom chat, and then back to students again. All right, so let's start here at the beginning. Can you tell us your name and your school, please?
I am Chloe Secker Martinez, and I go to McCallum High School. So during the freeze last week, some of our classrooms reached temperatures of 30 and 40 degrees, and we also had a new raccoon sighting, which is some frequent problems that we've been having at our school. My first question is, can you provide a timeline on when the bonds will be able and used to upgrade these high school facilities, and also how will you be able to ensure that the bond money goes directly into upgrading facilities such as heating, air conditioning, and different safety and health measurements?
Well, great question. And yes, there are many raccoon sightings at McCallum, and unfortunately we have other raccoon sightings at other schools. But one of the things that I think is important that we talk about is just the investment required to really make these improvements. And so, one of the things that you'll find about me is I am, hyper focused on making sure that our students have safe environments to learn, that our facilities are operating efficiently, that we're not wasting money on, you probably have a whole bunch of these, which are rental chillers and rental heaters. You probably had some of those this past week. And so for us as an organization, in 2017, we passed $1 billion bond. That went to really addressing some of the campuses that had some of our worst facility issues. This time around, the $2.44 billion bond, which we worked collaboratively with the board, the Long Range Planning Committee, as well as lots of different folks in the community, we're able to identify different investments to go towards many of our schools. And McCallum is one of those schools, as well as many others. McCallum received over $60 million, and that's a planning process, right? We have to work with the community by way of a campus architectural team to identify, where those dollars are going to be focused. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that those HVAC improvements are part of the overall project. One of the things that I think is important for our community to know is that, to do a high school, it takes multiple bonds, right? And so for us as an organization, just know that as we move forward, you have phase 1, you have phase 2, you have phase 3. The other thing that I will also touch on is you talked about raccoons, right? And here in Austin ISD, we do have a robust safety and service center. And one of the things that we do is we deploy folks to go and address these issues whenever we have them at campuses. I will tell you that in the past, it's been really hard to hire. And so one of the things that the board was able to do in collaboration with this administration last year was to actually increase compensation for classified staff. So from going from $16 an hour to $20 an hour, it actually allowed us to hire a lot of folks that can then tackle that work. So we do have a lot of spaces in AISD that aren't quite there just yet, but luckily for us, we do have the investment to move in that direction, and we're going to move very, very aggressively. Thank you. Of course.
All right.
I'll put the mic closer. I'm sorry, y'all. I saw some hands in the audience, a little louder, so I apologize.
I saw the same thing for myself, so I'm going to lean a little bit. All right, so this question actually segues really nicely with the first question we have, the highest rated in the Thought Exchange, which is, what is the plan to make work conditions for teachers better? Many teachers have far too many students, inadequate facilities, and a lot of stress.
Yeah, so the one thing I want to be very, very clear about is, I genuinely believe that our educators are professionals. And we have to approach all of this work in that way. And it's also not lost on me that within Austin ISD and historically, it's been very, very difficult for us to be able to compensate them, in a way that allows them to live in the community they serve. And so one of the things that the board and the administration have been talking about, and last year I think took a meaningful step towards, is having aggressive compensation packages over a period of time, so at some point in the future we can talk about Austin ISD being the highest paying school district in Central Texas. We cannot do that without taking meaningful steps. The other thing that I would say is, we have to understand, what have we asked our educators to do? Last year towards the end of the spring semester, Brandy Hosick, Chief of Talent and Strategy, we had a conversation around a systematic overview of evaluating all those things that we've put on teacher plates. And there's a lot of them. Some of them have been mandated by the local campus, some of them have been mandated by, construction, some of them have been mandated by finance. Those things add up over time. And so we went through a strategic abandonment process and began to remove some of those. I think at the end of the day, we need to be an organization that fully embraces the instructional time that our educators have in the classroom and the relationship that they have with our students. And my role is to take all of those burdens, get them out of the way, right? I don't want an educator to worry about whether they're safe. I don't want an educator to worry about whether the water's running or whether the heat's running. Those are the things that we as a system need to truly address so that instruction can occur in the way that it really can in the classroom. And so that's the way that we're approaching the work. I think you've, over the last 10 months or 11 months, have seen some meaningful progress, but we've got a ways to go. But that's how we're tackling that, and it'll be an ongoing collaboration with the board and the administration, because our budget is a reflection of our values. And if it's not in the budget, it's not going to get done.
All right. right, thank you so much. All right, second student here. Name and school campus, please.
I'm Emerson Merritt, and I go to McCallum High School. And my question is that we know that the TEA is monitoring the district in its service with special ed teachers and students. How, as the superintendent, do you plan to go about helping the district meet the TEA requirements with special ed while also ensuring the schools have enough staff to support all the newly identified students receiving special ed services?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. So for those who might be tuning in, or those in the audience who may not know, when I started as the interim superintendent about 12, 13 months ago in January, one of the first things that we had to really address was this ongoing investigation that had taken place over the last 2 years. And the findings from that made it to where AISD was going to have to work through some non-compliance issues that just had taken root in the system. And so we, along with the board and the teams, made some aggressive decisions early on in the spring, developed a comprehensive special education initiative, and really began to move that work over the spring semester. And so what I'll tell you is, we have to change the system. We had to really think about evaluations. We had to think about our process and hiring. We had to really think about professional development. And so we have a comprehensive initiative. The evaluations and things tied to the order, they're one aspect of it, but a truly inclusive model is like the vision, right? Where are we going to go as an organization to where every single student feels, like they can be who they are in our classroom, and we're supporting them fully. And I tell people all the time, it's not that we have a special education issue, we have a general education issue. And so my role and my job is to make sure that we're compliant. And the board signed the order in August of last year. We've hit every one of our milestones, but that also requires us making investments. And so last year, as part of the budgeting process, we had to hire 50 additional special education staff, right? Because we knew that there was going to be an influx of need, given that we were going to catch up on evaluations. The other thing that we had to do was to make sure that we had LSSPs and diagnosticians to really to help us with the evaluations. At one point, we had 22, but we needed 73. And so working with the board, being aggressive, making those decisions allowed us to really begin to move the work. And so we haven't been able to fill all those positions. So now as we work with the board over the course of the spring semester, the question becomes, what other thing are we going to do to get to where we are fully staffed and able to support all of our students? And so again, that has to be reflected in our budget. We'll have to look at stipends, we'll have to look at compensation, we'll also have to look at student-teacher ratios in some of our campuses that have those higher needs. So we've taken many steps, we have a ways to go, but that is one thing that I am incredibly close to, is the order and then all of our compliance requirements with TEA. And we've been doing good. We hit our deliverables to date.
I like that. And again, that does segue really nicely. By the way, Emmy, I didn't recognize you. It's good to see you again. She was a former Lamar student. All right. So the question in the Thought Exchange is asking how we can ensure that SPED has the allotted budget needed to fully staff. And I feel like you addressed part of that, but if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, so I want to be very clear that, the values of this organization have to be threaded and aligned between the board and the administration. If the initiatives that the administration is taking on are in alignment with our board and the values and our scorecard goals, then, when the board is having to approve a budget and there's disconnect and there isn't alignment, it's going to be a challenge for us. And so it's really, really helpful that our board receive feedback from our community, from our students, as to what are those priorities. We know special education is obviously one of them. It's 1A for me. But as we move through the budgeting process, which we're in the middle of right now, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what other things are we not going to be able to pay for in order to get this right? Or what other cost reduction strategies do we want to consider in order to get this across the finish line? And again, always think in the back of our minds that compensation is something that we're going to have to address every single year. And so for us, we're looking at every single expense that we have. We're trying to determine these programs, these investments, is the intent of the original expenditure like actually being realized? And if it isn't, then we need to make an adjustment. And if it is, we need to understand why, and then understand how it's going to be reflected in the future budget. And so it is an area of focus for us. It's a dialogue between the board and the administration, but we don't get there without getting into the weeds of all of it and making sure that those investments align with our budget, with our initiatives. Because at the end of the day, like I said before, and I'll say it again, our budget is a reflection of our values. If it's not in the budget, it's not going to really be moving. And so we have to make sure that alignment is stable and secured and supported.
All right, number 3 student.
My name is Ingrid Smith, and I also go to McCallum High School. And last year I wrote a story for my school paper about how my orchestra teachers were teaching at 2 schools, McCallum and Lamar, due to budget cuts. And they expressed their frustrations about that along with other fine arts staff in Austin ISD. So I'm wondering, moving forward, how will you prioritize fine arts issues and handle the budget?
Well, I will tell you that over the last 11 months, I hope that our community and our students and our staff have seen us take a long, hard look around some of the decisions that were made previously. And so we've made some adjustments and moved in the direction that I think better supports the overall system. I will tell you that, for us as an organization, as a community, again, it's alignment with values. And I tell folks all the time, fine arts, athletics, these are some of the reasons that our students come to school. We were talking up here about y'all playing golf. We talked about fine arts earlier. These things matter. And our students, sometimes come to school to participate. And that's one of the only reasons they come. And so for us, we need to acknowledge that. We understand it's part of the academic system and support it accordingly. I can't speak to that specific experience, but I can tell you that isn't my expectation. And I can tell you I don't believe that's the board's expectation. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that our students are being served. You saw us over the last year move towards universal choice sheets so that our students have the ability to identify all things that are available in AISD. And if we have students that have a particular interest, we, the administration, will make the adjustment and the investment to ensure that we have someone there to support that program. Again, we have to make sure that it makes sense, which means we'll have to provide access and supports. But those are some of the things that we're doing, and it's going to take a while. Like, we can't do all of this overnight. It will take a period of time before we get to where we want to be. But I want to do the work, and I know the board does as well.
All right, so I'm going to go back to a thought exchange question, and I'm going to need you to help me out here. It says, how can AISD claw back some of the recapture funds so that we can fully fund our budget and SPED requirements? Other ISDs have declared they won't pay. I've heard this before. Could you first, before you talk about getting some of that money, can you talk about what recapture is? Because I know not everybody knows.
That's right. Do you know what recapture is? Have you heard about it?
No.
All right. Well, let me tell you. So recapture is a system that is within the state of Texas, and essentially what it does is takes dollars that are collected by way of property value from what they identified, again, they being the state, as property-rich school districts. And so you look around Austin, and you probably know that property values are increasing, and they have been escalated for quite some time. And so what happens is the state identifies a percent that goes to them and then gets redistributed to other school districts. That's the theory. There's some questions around how much actually gets redistributed, but I won't go there. The main, I think, point is that we give every single year a significant amount of funds to the state. Last year it was a little over $920 million. The year before that was 800. This would be 920. Last year was 870 million dollars. So we're closing in on $1 billion. And so what that means is that we, as a school district, have less. So a really good way to think about this is we are giving away the same amount that we actually use to operate every day, which means that we can actually operate a whole other AISD with how much money we're giving away to the state. And so this becomes a challenge for us because we have aging infrastructure, we have needs, we have a large school district, 113 schools, multiple facilities, 81% of the students in Austin come to Austin ISD. And so for us, one of the things that we've been tackling for a good while now is how do we address this? Because there are many other school districts in the state, over 1,000 of them, that benefit from recapture. So if we go and our and approach that system, it's unlikely that we'll be successful, which is why the board and the administration, well, the board specifically, identified an approach that would allow us to raise the C, right? Increase the student allotment so that every single student in Austin ISD gets more funds, from the state. That helps everybody. So that's been our approach for the last couple years. It's been kind of tied up in a variety of different things, but that is our focus. And so, yes, recapture is real. It does impact our ability to budget year in and year out. And there are things that we cannot do because of recapture. But I also think that we have an incredibly thoughtful budgeting process. We have very skilled individuals, and we've been able to maintain a AAA bond rating. We've been able to do a lot of different things. And so for us, it's about looking internal into how we operate. It's about being strategic with our advocates, whether it's at the state legislature or our senators or our board trustees advocating on our behalf. But we can only control the existing system and then advocate for the whole. And that's been our strategy. And so it is top of mind. We think about it all the time, I promise you. And it's something that's not likely to go away anytime soon.
So does that mean it's a no on declaring we won't pay?
So the declaring you won't pay is not necessarily a useful strategy in most cases, because you're going to pay. One way or another, you will pay. And so one of the things the state can do is actually implement a process that actually carves out property from the school district. And so this is something else people don't talk about. If you say you're not going to pay, then the state could say, okay, well, we'll balance it out and actually carve out a section of the school district to balance out property values, which is a way to offset that cost. We don't want to lose any part of AISD. And so that strategy, we know some school districts have said that. We haven't seen that go all the way through implementation. So that's out there. It's not a strategy that I would recommend. And so that's where we are with that. But yes, we will be paying our budget. But I will also say, our recapture payment. The timing of payment is also very critical, because with current interest rates, there are opportunities for us to hold that money for a period of time, generate revenue, and then have that offset some of our costs. And so we are constantly thinking about how do we go over here to pick up a couple of dollars? How do we go over here to pick up a couple of dollars to offset some of these expenditures and ensure that we can do everything that we think we need to do to support our students?
All right, some strategy. Okay, so
sorry, I was long-winded.
No, I think it's interesting. All right, so next student, go for it. Sure. Name and school campus, please.
Easy question.
I'm not sure about that. Hi, my name is Phoenix Tova. I go to Eastside Early College High School, and my question is, what can you commit to making sure we have the best teachers at our Title I schools like Eastside consistently over time?
Great question. So the last couple of years have been challenging. After the pandemic, we saw a lot of educators leave the workforce, and we have to figure out how to get them back. Right now, we're at 96.5% staffed, which is the highest we've been in quite some time. And that's with adding a lot of different positions, including those 50 special education teachers that you heard me talk about just a couple moments ago. But you bring up a really good question. How do we as an organization ensure that our historically underserved students and communities get the highest quality educators, right? And that they stay. And it is a multi-year process. It's not something that can be done over a year, in one budget cycle. But I can tell you that we are exploring different solutions. One of the things that I want to make sure is known is that whenever you commit to some type of funding strategy that incentivizes educators to teach at schools that have been historically underserved, we have to think through, what happens 5 years from now if the school is no longer identified as a historically underserved student as a school that has those needs. What happens, if a teacher decides to move to a different, school in AISD? What protocols do we need to have in place? So I think there's a conversation to be had with the community and with our board as to what things align with our values, but also meet that intent, right? Because we understand that the thing that is going to impact outcomes the most is the educator in the classroom. And so we need to not only attract the best. We need to keep the ones that are here, support them, ensure that they're valued as professionals. We need to have aggressive compensation packages. We need to think about professional development, give them pathways, and do all of those things as well as invest in that way. So I don't have a plan currently. We did test one last year as part of the budgeting process. It wasn't one that I think was refined enough to take forward. But I want y'all to know that it is something that we talk about and we'll continue to talk about over the next couple of budget cycles. Is that helpful? Yeah.
All right, so Phoenix happens to be the daughter of an AISD librarian, and I'm using that as a segue for our next thought exchange question. Sorry, Phoenix. The next question is, what plans do you have for supporting our libraries and librarians?
So first and foremost, librarians and what they do within our schools, it's incredible. It's remarkable. And I always try to make it a point when I'm visiting the school to go to the library because it is part of the educational experience, an incredibly important part. And so, just thinking about the intentionality, how they support, how they invite students into the space and engage with them, making sure it's culturally relevant, reading material, like all of those things matter. So for us as an organization, something that I'm aligned with and one of my values is to ensure that we not only support it, support the program, but we also identify different ways to help improve it. There have been a variety of changes over the last 2 or 3 years within AISD, just structurally, how it aligns, where it resides in the organization. I think we've settled into a spot that I think works for now. But long term, as the board identifies the goals and we identify the growth progress measures and the initiatives, we'll have to understand, okay, what are those things that we are going to commit to and how are we going to move that work? I am a huge supporter of librarians, of libraries, and so I can't tell you precisely what that will look like, but I can tell you that supporting libraries and librarians is absolutely part of our work, which is why every time we talk about educators, we talk about teachers and librarians. Whenever we talk about compensation packages, it's teachers and librarians. So I want that to be crystal clear to everybody. And so hopefully that was helpful.
All right, thank you. And I apologize, I forgot to mention the second part of this question was that during the COVID years, librarians got pulled to do other unrelated jobs like Chromebooks. So I think I didn't want to leave that piece of it out.
Yeah, and so for those that may not know, we within AISD, we have to deploy Chromebooks to all of our students, and there's a cost associated and a burden associated with deployment, with inventory recording, and many of those things. And so in the past, the solution has been to create a stipend, and more often than not, that stipend and that request goes to the librarian. And so we, as an organization, to figure out where does that need to reside. Certainly, I know in some schools it does work okay, but I know in many other schools it doesn't. And so we need to figure out, how much autonomy we can provide, what works. And then the other question becomes, if there is a different person doing that work, how does that budget impact keep us from doing other things? And so it is something that I've heard about as a point of frustration. We have made some adjustments over the last year. I still think we have a ways to go to figure out what that will look like for the next couple years. But it is something that we talk about with our Chief Technology Officer, Oscar Rodriguez.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take one quick question from
Sure.
our Zoom chat. This is from a student I'm scrolling. The question says, my name is Lucy Thompson. I attend Anderson High School. As the only international baccalaureate IB high school in the district, how do you plan to ensure that this program is accessible throughout the district, especially in neighborhoods that lack the same resources?
So this is something that the trustees and I have talked about quite a bit. You can look at Austin ISD and identify different schools that have different pathways. You can look at Anderson and say IB. You can look at Bowie and say AP. You can look at Travis and think culinary. There are things that over the last many years have just become part of what AISD believes is that the idea of that school. We have to figure out how to create access and how to create opportunity for our students. But we also can't duplicate programs at every single school across every part of the city. That's cost prohibitive. So the question before us is, what's the academic vision? What are we going to do, and what are we willing to do to ensure that all of our students, for instance, if you wanted to try a program, like if you wanted to go construction technology at Crockett, how do we make that available to you? Because it's access and it's also the program. What I never want to do is to create the environment where a student feels like this outcome for them is the only outcome because they're going to the school. That's what we do not want. And so there's work to be done around that. As part of the long-range plan, there were ideas that were identified and actually, I would say, built up a good amount. And so I would love the opportunity to work with the board as they work through the scorecard goals and our growth progress measures to really see long-term what that will look like, because there are going to be some costs associated with it. We can't replicate a culinary CTE program at every high school. That space is costly. But if we have one at a high school, how do you, A, preserve the seats and then provide access for students who may not be in that area? And then, ensure that you have the expense and the budget to cover it for a period of time, so it doesn't go away and is the first thing on the table 2 or 3 years from now. Like, that's what we want: sustainable programs that really meet the needs of our students.
All right, and being very patient at the end here. Your name, please, and your campus.
I'm Ellison Martin. I go to Amateur School for Young Leaders. On a related note to libraries and librarians, how do you plan to defend the freedom of reading when there's a wave for calling banning of books?
You're,
I'm loving this.
Oh yeah, no, this is great. This is fantastic. You probably haven't heard this, but I often tell folks when I have conversations with them, like we're AISD. Let's own that. Let's understand the constraints that we have. And there are constraints out there. There are things that are happening in the state of Texas that are out of our control. And we can spend immense resources going and trying to move one thing or the other. But we also get to do a lot of things because we are Austin ISD, right? And we have values, and we get to represent those values each and every day within our schools and with our classrooms. And so, as long as our board and administration continue to be aligned, as long as our community is aligned, I think that we'll have the opportunity to support libraries and the opportunity to read what our students want to read. I think that what I've seen be maybe not as beneficial in the past is whenever we start to explore different opportunities and pursue different things and spend resources and not realize that a lot of these things are in our control. And if we take care of student outcomes, you'd be surprised at all the other things that we get to do. So that would be my recommendation and my approach. Again, you heard me talk about earlier how I am in line and very supportive, but I also recognize that we as Austin ISD get to do a lot. And so how do you protect that? How do you support that? How do you create policies and procedures and board alignment to ensure that we take care of everything and we provide the best experience for our students? But those are tough, and I could spend every day at the Capitol giving testimony about a specific position, but is Austin ISD at the Capitol giving testimony going to impact, your experience at Ann Richards in the library? Like that's the exchange that we have to talk about, because I will do what is required, and I will do whatever I possibly can, but I also will be honest when I think this is probably the best path versus maybe not a great path given resources. I don't know if that was helpful, but
yeah, no, and amazingly, it does align with a question that we received in the Thought Exchange. It was voted very highly, asking about your stance on book challenges. So look at you guys. All right, so I'd like to go to the next question I'm seeing on the Thought Exchange, which is AISD doubles up on positions rather than staffing important jobs. We need art facilitators, testing coordinators, and dyslexia specialists, specifically at the high school level. When teachers and APs have to fulfill roles outside their primary one, there isn't enough time to serve students for the best possible outcomes.
So
it's not a question, but
yeah. Well, I mean, that's okay.
Yeah. No. Go
okay.
ahead.
I think so. Last year, you heard me talk about making an investment and really doing what we could to attract LSSPs and diagnosticians who are part of the evaluation process, going from 22 to 73. and SLPs were part of that, but not in the way that we could have, because we had to make some adjustments first before we could get them on a separate scale and make adjustments. But even with all of that, those changes that we did, we still have gaps in our system. You said art facilitators, right? We don't have art facilitators currently within AISD, not in the way that I believe that person is describing. And so the question becomes, if AISD is going to make an investment, because that would help reduce some of the challenges we have within special education, there's going to be an expense. And you will see us deliberate that. You'll see us identify different proposals for it. The question becomes, how is that expense going to, what are the opportunities not going to be there if we go that path, which is, art facilitators, or if it's additional supports within special education. So it is something that we talked about as part of the last budgeting process, about really looking at art facilitators and other supports within AISD. One of the things I tell people all the time is it's scale. It's not just one art facilitator. Let's say you go one for every 3 campuses, you're looking at over 50 people. 50 FTEs full, with full compensation and benefits, ends up being a pretty big number. So what model works to address the need, but also allows us to take other things into consideration for the budget? So you'll always hear us have that honest dialogue, because we want to move the work, but we have finite resources and infinite need. And so that's how we'll tackle that over the course of this semester as we move through the budgeting process.
All right. We'd like to see if anyone here in the audience has questions that they want to ask of Mr. Segura while he is here.
Oh.
We do.
That looks like a question right there. Thank you so much. Okay, can I invite you to come? Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Sorry, this is probably kind of a softball question, but why do you want the position, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
No one ever really asks me that.
That sounds like a job interview, though, right?
So it's impact. When I first came on board, first of all, I never thought that I would be in this position. To be honest. When I came on board, the first 3 months were all about stopping the hemorrhaging. I mean, it was very volatile. Folks were transitioning. We needed to really think about doing what we could to stabilize the organization and then begin to move into a healing process. The next 3 months were all about, let's make AISD a really attractive school district for a future leader. Like, I'm being vulnerable here because you asked me a good question, a question that I think requires this response. Those 3 months and 4 months were all about, budget. Let's get a compensation package together that will allow us to be better staffed moving into the 23-24 school year. Let's address TEA. Let's negotiate an order that moves AISD in a direction that allows us to be better positioned long term, right? So that's where the focus was. Make decisions within the organization so that we didn't have vacancies within executive directors that were supporting principals. We didn't have vacancies within academics that were supporting, PLCs. Like, we had to make those decisions then to be prepared for August of 2023. And so the board was gracious and allowed me to execute that plan, because I felt strongly that if we didn't do all that we could by August 2024, then this year would be another year of disruption, and these students here would have been impacted. So then we move out of that period of time, and then all of a sudden the systems begin to work, right? Attrition at Title I schools is down almost 11%. You heard me talk about vacancies, and our staffing's at 96.5%. We got the agreed upon order with TEA, and I burned my boats. I had to hire a COO and a chief of operations, interim superintendent of operations, because I wasn't going to allow the bond to be at risk because I was in this role. So then I had to think about, okay, well, I love this organization. I'm a product of AISD. My mom taught here for 42 years. I have 2 girls in AISD right now. Like, I am all in, and I felt genuinely that I wanted a chance to impact this organization, the community, the best that I could, because I love it. I love AISD. So that is why I decided to give it a shot. And honestly, just to be here I'm just incredibly grateful and just super excited and ready to go. So that's why. I don't know if that made any sense.
And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, it depends. I mean, hopefully here. We'll see.
Sir, we're ready for you.
It's not a given, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Did you have a question, sir?
Yes. All right. So the mic doesn't go further. I'll hold it for you.
Oh.
It's okay, I'll hold it.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking my question.
Can you tell us who you are?
My name is Anton Morris.
Nice to meet you, Anton.
I have a student at Northeast Early College High School.
Lots of letters there, yes.
Got it.
Right? All right. So how will you measure your success? And how should we, the voters, objectively hold you accountable?
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the board is going to set the goals for the district, right, based on community feedback. And I think this forum helps inform that. And they will have many conversations over the next many weeks to help identify what those goals are. Those goals are going to be limited, right, because there are many things that we do as an organization that are not going to be in those goals. Now, for us as an administration, like my job is to ensure that our community, that we're transparent, that we're collaborative, that we're doing things together and building comprehensive initiatives that align with those goals. So, for instance, we talk about student outcomes, right? Ensuring that our historically underserved student populations, Black and brown students, students who look like me, that their academic success improves over time and not be bashful about where we are. I think in the past, years past, it was all, bundled together and AISD is doing really great, but it's not great for everybody. And so I would want this community to measure my success on the ability to move student outcomes for the most underserved within Austin ISD. That is one thing that I would want to be held accountable for. And I'll hold myself accountable. I'm going to hold our team accountable. And that also includes the board, being in alignment with the administration. And so, yeah, that's what and we report on that every time, sir. So if there are things that I'm not doing, which you'll find about me is I will engage, I will have conversations, I will adjust, but I also need our community to understand where we have constraints. What are the things that I can't do? As much as I would love to do them, what can I not do? And if we're having those conversations, I think we're going to be fine and be able to do a lot together. But that's what I would say is student outcomes for those student groups.
Beautiful. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. And you have a question? Perfect. Yes.
There's been some buzz about paying into the Social Security system and how that affects teacher pensions. And I'm just curious to know, so what the buzz was something about if a certain amount has not been paid into Social Security, then that jeopardizes teachers' pensions. Can you kind of clarify what that's about?
So,
Are you a teacher?
In another district.
You want to come to AISD? Come on.
That's why I'm asking, because maybe I'm considering.
Oh, okay.
This answer better be good.
I know. Well, so we are one of only, I believe, 4 or 5 school districts that actually pay into Social Security. So back in the 1950s, 1960s, there was legislation passed that allowed school districts to opt out of Social Security. We were not one of them. So a lot of folks don't realize that. So not that I would say other school districts, but pretty much every school district around us doesn't pay into Social Security. So it is a benefit for those who are looking at, kind of long term and where they might be once they are later in the career, or what goals they may have later in the career. I'm not aware of any risk introduced. It's been in place for quite some time. I will tell you that in the past we've talked about, well, if we didn't pay into Social Security, could we do these other things? That option doesn't necessarily exist to us without a lot of movement, like board action, state action. But I am not aware of any risk. I can certainly, grab your name and number and work with my CFO to see if there's anything that I missed. But, I am very familiar with our finances and the strategies that we deploy. But just for everybody's awareness, we are one of 4 or 5. I'll get the right number. It's pretty rare, actually. And most folks actually view it as a benefit when they come to AISD, that we do pay into both TRS and Social Security. Little fact nugget for those who might not have known that. But I'll be happy to answer that question in more detail. But I'm not aware of a risk regarding that whatsoever.
So when you provide him with your name and number, also bring your resume.
Oh, I can tell she's going to be good. Just with that.
Could you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Margarita Mincer. I have 2 students at Riley Elementary. One thing that I think that the majority of our parents really worry about is safety. With school safety is a major issue in everybody's minds. Gun violence, bullying, weapons, student behavior problems are top concern for all. I would like to ask you if you would consider upgrading the incident reports to electronic forms. That way we can track our progress, see where, the reoccurring incidents happen, and try to focus our resources in those schools. And the other is consider a strong, regular social emotional learning in all campuses to mitigate it long term. I feel like if we give our students the tools and the knowledge on how to manage their emotions and conflict resolution early on in elementary school, we can really solidify and give them the tools for them to be successful and safe throughout their middle school and high school time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you.
Thank you. So a two-part question.
Two-part question. The first is security. So one of the things that I will say is, security is the priority for us. And we recognize that we have different facilities, we have different things that we have to work through. Back when I was in my previous role, one of the things that we did in the $2.44 billion bond program was to reinforce security, right? So making sure that all of our schools had a security vestibule, making sure that whenever we redeveloped a campus, that we had, all the expectations and design standards were met to meet our security specifications. But you bring up a really good point, and I really appreciate that you said this, because most people think about active shooter when they think about security. But for us as an organization, we have to think about the spectrum of risk, right? We have to think about bullying that occurs, and how would you design a campus not to have, like nooks or hideaway spots? How do you design and how do you create professional development so that students can be engaged with and understand what to do if they're in that environment? So we have, in January of last year, we started a safety and security initiative. We actually built out a comprehensive resource. It was approved administratively in June. And so every one of our over 5,000 classrooms has this resource, and it talks about what do you do if X, Y, or Z occurs. And we have racial discrimination, we have gas leaks. I mean, the list goes on. And for me, it was really important that we align the police department, mental health, the needs of teaching, leading, and learning, and our students, right? Because at the end of the day, all of those things, there's an intersection between all of them. And so we went through that process. We created that resource. We provided professional development over the summertime to do it. Most people don't know about all this. And then we started, I was very, very, I was very firm in wanting to make sure that we practiced whenever we had severe events. So we had an incident at Northeast Raleigh College High School earlier this year, and we had to reunify a high school, move an entire high school. This is not something that happens almost ever. I mean, I can't think of a time when it's happened in AISD, but what's really interesting about that is we had practiced that very thing 2 weeks prior. We brought the FBI in, we brought the Homeland Security in, we brought APD in, our officers. And so I want to embrace a culture of safety. Right now, every single thing that happens in our schools, once we get wind of it, we track it all the way down. It could be 2 students engaging with one another in a hallway and one saying that I'm going to do some harm to you. We take that seriously. We have threads. We begin to pursue it. Officers are engaged. Our staff is engaged. And so I want you to know that we take that very seriously, and all of that runs through the superintendent's office, because there are certain decisions that only the superintendent can make. And so the other thing I'll say is mental health, social emotional learning. We are actually building out a comprehensive mental health initiative. So SEL is a part of the academic system, but mental health is one that, in my opinion, needs to be reinforced. And so it really comes down to, okay, so what is the appropriate distribution of counselors to students, right? Because we want to make sure there's that access. We have standards at the state level. We have standards that are best practice. Those are higher than what we have at AISD, right? And so that's a staffing challenge that we have. So we need to address that, and that's a budget issue. The next thing is data. We need to be able to see the students that are invisible. Right? Sometimes a student may have excessive absences. A student may have grades that begin to trend in the wrong direction. And unless our staff and our administrators are keyed in, we could miss that. So what data are we collecting to where we can identify those students and then work with our teachers and our principals once they have professional development to understand how to engage those students? And then the last thing is we're opening up counseling space and mental health space at every one of our campuses. That's already underway. We have about 40 campuses done. We're creating discrete space within our campuses. They're going to be protected space so that our licensed mental health professionals, we had 14, now we have 28. That was something the board did with support from the administration just last year. So it's all an alignment task within the organization so that all of us own it together. So it's the physical, it's the mental, it's professional development, and then it's us tracking the data and then working with our board to ensure that our budget aligns with those expenses. Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Margarita, we want everybody to hear, including the people online.
So I do feel like that's super important. I would like to bring a little more attention on the preventative side for the social emotional learning for like elementary kids, for solid foundation for when, they get to middle school, they learn how to do conflict resolution and there's no fights, there's no bullying, or hopefully minimize it, right? But really focus on the preventative and the foundation at building it at the elementary school levels. Just wanted to point that out there.
Well, so one of the things that we did last year, and we can kind of segue. So last year we had one assistant superintendent of academics, right, K through 12, and we split that. We did elementary and secondary, right, because I think one of the things that we wanted to do was to ensure that academics, SEL, all of that was in multilingual, all that was aligned to the student groups, and it wasn't split because I want to make sure that the practitioners, right, the principals, the administrators, the teachers are in step with academics, as well as mental health, as well as safety and security, all of these things. And so that was a change that we made last year to I think reinforce the focus within academics to allow SEL and everything else to be way more intentional than it had been. But again, it's going to take some time. I mean, we have many programs. We've done a lot. I think AISD has done an incredible job. There's a long ways to go, but the last 2 years have been very disruptive. Think of all the things that didn't get done because we were turning over, there's a lot of different leadership changes. And so I'm committed to the work. I think what you'll see from me is clear pathways. I will never tell you I can do something unless I can communicate to you the 1,000 steps it takes to get there. And I think in the past, that's one of the challenges we've had is that, we're going to be here in 6 months, we're going to be here in 18 months, but the board is holding the administration accountable, and I have to likewise communicate to our community, to our students, to our staff, like what is it going to take to get there so that there's not a vacuum and there's no information flow back and forth. I also want to communicate out that if we take on too many things at one time, we're not going to be successful. And so I think it's really important that we as a community identify with the board what are those things that we are going to be steadfast on, what are those things that are really important, but maybe we can only tackle these two aspects of it in year one, and then in year two we can tackle these other things. If we do all of these things at one time, I'm fearful that we'll not meet the expectations of our community. So you'll always hear me think about working that way. So sorry about that.
All right. No, you're fine. I'd like to find out if any of the students on stage have any further questions while you're here.
I have a quick comment. I just want to say I appreciate you talking about school safety, especially because one of the topics me and my classmates talk a lot is about active shooters, and it's definitely a fear that we all have. So thank you for taking that seriously.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so this is our chance to say thank you quickly to the students for coming out. I think it says a lot about you for being here and
thank you.
Speaking to our potential superintendent. You guys are awesome.
And this is my chance to thank you for being here. Matias Segura is the lone candidate for superintendent for Austin ISD. On Thursday, we had these conversations and we had another group of students and they were powerful. We are going to have answers to the questions that were not answered today. We're going to have answers to those questions on our website. And I love the topics. I mean, everything about libraries, right, Matias? They're such magical places, and librarians, people who heal the community, and talking about mental health and talking about the budget. Let me plug the budget in. On Tuesday, we're going to have two conversations, one at noon and one at 6 p.m. The one at noon is going to be en español, es virtual. The one at 6 p.m. is going to be virtual también, but it's going to be in English. And so you all are invited. It's on the website, austinisd.org calendar. Tuesday, you have a date with me, and we're going to talk about the budget. Yes. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the audience. Give yourself a big round of applause for being involved, for being part of Austin ISD, for being part of the future, and let's meet again soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.